Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome everybody to the Conscious Endeavor. I'm Lee Davy.
Scott Tate,
and our guest,
Michael
Brook. So this is actually our third session, I guess. It's just been Scott and I to date, but we thought we'd jump out of the plane and see what interviewing somebody would be like, and I think the whole idea that we've discussed about this show is really to touch on 4 different pillars, so mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical elements, expose kind of current societal norms and things that could be improved upon, and then go into our guest's life a little bit and see what pillar kind of got you started and which one you lean on the most and how you incorporate the others. And then, tell us a little bit more about what you're doing and leave our guests with any kind of tools and that sort of thing that they can use to make change in different areas of their life. So I think that's
a great introduction to it all.
All right.
Thank you, Lee.
Pleasure.
I guess first question I have for you, really, it's a beautiful day outside. Have you been out for a board yet?
I did. I actually skated from around Finch and Young area, and I skated downtown a little bit. And yes, I definitely try and get out during the spring and summer and fall seasons. It's really wonderful. So I usually try and get out for an hour a day.
And how did you start getting into this? So if for people that don't know, tell us about what you do and what we'll talk about the physical pillar first and what you do for your physical health. Maybe start there and explore that.
Good.
We're talking about boarding right now, longboarding in particular.
Right.
So fill us in.
So I've been skateboarding for 41 years. I started in the summer of 1975. And I'm not sure what I was drawn to it, but I just stayed with it for multitudes of years. And about 20 or so years ago, I started a website called the Skate Geezer homepage. And it was for people who skated who were in their 30s and 40s. And skateboarding has always mutated, it's always changed, but the one thing that kind of keeps it together is a sense of freedom, a sense of balance, and a sense of flow. And longboarding, when it started to kind of reverberate around the world back in the late 90s, I kind of picked up on it, and I created a magazine called International Longboarder. And that went for 3 years, and in the third year, I developed another magazine called Concrete Wave. And the reason why that happened is I'm actually a failed photocopier salesman. I was trying to sell photocopiers to book publishers, and I wound up just telling somebody back in 1996, I have a website on skateboarding. And the guy said, that's really interesting. We're thinking about doing a book on skateboarding. Why don't you put something together? And from that one little sentence, I wrote a book, and it sold about 43,000 copies. It turned into a television show. And here I am sitting with you guys. I mean, it's just one little butterfly effect, and it just reverberates around the world. And that's what happened. Started a magazine.
Do you want to show? This is
the kind of board.
This is one of them, I guess.
Yeah.
One of the versions.
This magazine promotes this kind of skating, which is very much about the flow. The trick skating is awesome. Like street skating is wonderful. The difficulty, of course, is that once you hit 20-something, you discover nefarious activities. You discover women, music, other things, and most of it is driven by super high performance tricks, and sometimes your knees can't handle that at age 40. So I offer something that's a little more flowy, and it's like anything. There's worlds where they both meet, and there's some people that do not want those worlds to meet. And I said, no, they need to meet, and that's what I do.
Cool. So when you talk about worlds meeting, we've had some pretty enlightening discussions about all kinds of worlds meeting, and I think that kind of flows into the other pillars, like the mental, emotional, spiritual. So can you kind of maybe allude to how you went from this to some of the other conversations that we've had in terms of consciousness and
I think the truth is that team sports are wonderful things, but I also think they reinforce this idea of the pyramid. And the pyramid, what I mean by that is that 80% of the time, 20% of the players have the puck or the ball, and in some cases, 1% of the players have it, much more than others. And it's this idea of a structure that it's necessary. We need teams. We need to think in teams. We're social animals, and there's no doubt in my mind that the pyramid shape and what it stands for, capitalism works on it very much a pyramid shape.
That's
right?
exactly what we talked about in terms of societal.
So the attitude I take is, exactly. So the attitude I take is, well, what happens if you compete at something, but you're actually only competing with yourself? So you're doing a marathon. You're not racing against anybody but yourself. You're lifting weights. It's only you're competing yourself with. With skateboarding, you can compete, and there's high-level people who do that. But skateboarding, the act of trying to just ride from point A to point B, as they say, the journey is the destination. And the idea of the ride being the reward, I don't know how to say this except that I like team sports. I'll watch a football game, and I have great appreciation for athletes, but I also know you need other types of people in this world. You need people who think a little differently and who say, I'm enjoying the sense of just feeling the bliss of riding. And so snowboarding requires obviously a hill and money. Surfing requires a surfboard and the ability to be near surf. Wakeboarding requires a boat. Skateboarding is the only activity that's a board sport that you literally open up the door and you go. And what I think that does to people is it opens up their ideas with respect to what's possible. I think 41 years, I think my pineal gland probably said, okay, enough. I'm not gonna calcify. I feel like I'm 11 years old when I skate. And if you can go back to the idea of what it is we're trying to do as humans, I think a lot of us are trying to evolve, we're trying to grow, better ourselves, we're trying to be good. A lot of us get stuck with the head. This doesn't make sense financially, and we get worried, I have to do this. And then when you start to think with your heart, I think it starts to open up a lot more things. And skateboarding is one of those things that, yeah, I got a little bit of money skateboarding, but I was never professional. I was never about that. The ride was the reward. And so that's how I did this, Lee. That's how I did it, Scott. I literally opened up my heart as I was opening up my mind. And the balance worked.
Opened up
the whole, yeah, pretty much.
The pineal gland.
The pineal gland just took off. And so there's, fluoride is bad. Yeah, maybe you should have non-fluoridated toothpaste, but just not drinking water that has fluoride in it is not going to open up your pineal gland.
Right.
You have to live this through your heart. That's a pretty hard job. And so I think I'm a bridge. I think that's where my role is that taking people and saying, if you just stand on this board, and all of a sudden you've got people going, oh, and if you just think about what sacred geometry is, you look at the math behind it, all of a sudden you bring people together. And I didn't know what sacred geometry was until I was 47 years old.
I'm only just learning about it now. Like little bits trickle in here and there, but to see it come to life in some ways, and I didn't even consider the boarding as a representation of it until you mention it now. There's there's so many different ways to explore things with our physical bodies. And that's what draws me to the longboarding, and I've only had little tastes here and there, but being on that board and just stepping on it today, like you said, here, just step on it and see what it's like, just opened my eyes to something entirely different. That experience of feeling the flex on something, feeling how it can, or just standing, let alone moving, it can carve and move and respond, was astounding. And I didn't even consider, again, the sacred geometry piece, just being on it and exploring that little bit was eye-opening, and I could feel that kind of that youthfulness immediately. I think being honest, like I remember what it's like to try something that was a little scary and a little uncertain, a little different. It's like, oh yeah.
I think we're all looking for that little pathway, that little catalyst. I mean, I wouldn't have met Lee had it not been for this idea that I had of creating a magazine about finding your flow. And I saw his logo, the logo spoke to me, and I think we're always doing that. We're putting out messages, and we're social beings. We want to have that connection. And I look at that and I thought, who is this guy? I barged into your place, I remember, and I thought to myself, this is a guy that gets it. So I think if you put it out there in certain ways, it transcends, oddly enough, it transcends that barrier. And once you've done that, you find yourself opening up both sides of your brain. And once you do that, then all of a sudden, it all starts to make a lot more sense. Because it's hard. It's hard for a left brain person to understand flow. And it's hard for a right brain person to understand the concept of ratios and physics and design and numbers. I mean, I'm very left brain, and my father was very right brain. My father was a doctor and a dentist by the time he was 25. Okay, but I didn't get any of that left brain stuff. I got, get out and skate, and I did that. And so I think about it, gosh, my dad taught me a lot. But the one thing he couldn't do is he couldn't have me pass grade 10 chemistry. And now I find myself looking at quantum mechanics. So
don't you find that's, when we go into the education system, that's confining you to within a box, right? And when you say maybe that's why you weren't actually interested in that, is because like we're not supposed to be confined. We're not supposed to be contained. We're supposed to be, accessing these different realms or different heights of consciousness, and school doesn't allow for that.
I completely agree, Lee. I think if anything, school kind of tries to force it into a pyramid. you know, the valedictorian, the best dressed at the prom.
We're gonna have to cut this for a second. I just totally realized someone's gonna try and buzz in my door
I'm so
downstairs,
sorry.
and that's my bad. Here, no, Ben, come on in. We can keep recording. We'll just cut it later. I want someone buzz in 656. Just turn it on for them. That'd be Jacob trying to get in there, probably.
Poor Jacob. Okay.
Sorry, that's my bad entirely. We'll keep rolling.
Okay.
I interrupted. There'll be a cutscene.
We'll fix it in the mix.
It'll be commercial. We'll get your logo to pop up at that point. Yeah, ridiculous. Oh well. Get that figured out hopefully they're in. And the key is also right there. Is it that one? The one that
The one that you found.
Yeah.
That's a good thing you found that.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. Dropped that ball entirely.
So
we're talking about
in
education,
terms of the
so
education
yeah.
system, and the education builds workers to fit into the system, which is built on the pyramid system.
Not only does it
how
build the
everything-
workers to build the system, it then invites people like Steve Jobs, who didn't fit in the system, to kind of reverberate and tell the system, see, we're doing a great job.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs was the iconoclast. He literally, there was not a club that he wanted to be a member of. He gave these wonderful speeches in these places of education that are superb. At the same time, he had nothing
The
to do.
furthest thing from them.
Yeah.
His whole deal was, I'm going to work with Steve Wozniak and think, and that's why I always laugh, because my wife's a teacher, but she's a very special teacher. She's the teacher that all the kids want. She's the teacher that has that soul, that passion. And again, 80% of teachers, it's a job. And some union members are going to say, oh, you can't say that. I said, no, you know what? There are people that show up every day, they do their job, they teach the kids, they're competent rather. But the 20% of teachers that just sparkle, that just shine, that take those gifted kids or see a spark in a kid. You can't discount that. That's my left side of the brain saying there is a number out there in terms of teachers who literally are they're the greatest. They really do make things happen.
But what you mentioned about soul and passion,
Yeah.
right? That's because those are the teachers that are doing what they love. How many teachers are actually doing what they love? They're just doing it because it was, they couldn't think of what they wanted to do, and right? And that's what our society is built on. Society is built on people who they fall into something or they do something just because, and they're not really doing what they're most passionate about, what they love, what's going to invigorate them to get up every single day to really move forward and build, a life to order rather than one that, this is good.
But it's baby steps. I didn't just turn the TV on one day and say, oh, I'm going to write a book. It was one of those things where I was working from 9 to 5, chipping away at this little website, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. My brother was the one who was doing the code. And you look at it now, the skate user homepage looks terrible.
I want to go back and see the old school
Oh,
original
it's
90s. I
terrible.
love the
Yeah.
90s web pages. They're so good.
I mean, it's brutal, but it's one of those things that costs $5. It literally costs $5 a month to run this. And that's why I always tell people, a lot of the stuff, when it comes to information, a lot of it is free, or to start something, you can just have a little red paper clip. The guy that traded his red paper clip for this house. I actually called him.
Really?
There's a number on his website. It says Kyle Hotline. I said, okay, I'll call. Hello. He called me back. I left a message. He called me, hey, this is Kyle. What's the hotline? What's the message? I'm like, dude, I just want to say how much you inspired me. And this is an amazing story. Paperclip for a house. It's amazing. I've incorporated it in my whole shtick with Longboarding for Peace. You have? Okay. Send me some information. And for a guy that, seeded this wonderful experience, he was a bit of, he hasn't gotten back to me. I'm not worried. Because again, people, they start these things and then they take on a life of its own. Little did he know that his red paper clip thing is something that you can teach kids and they love the story. Mm-hmm. But I look at it as you take the red paper clip and you take the butterfly effect and you get the butterclip effect. All of a sudden, a small thing like a $5 a month website or a knock on a door to transcend your house, and all of a sudden, it opens up all kinds of conversations. Yeah. Lee's been in a magazine, 5,000 we gave away. He's going to be part of the whole Magic of Balance program that we're doing. You're now involved. All of a sudden, one little small thing, and boom, there are people in New York. So next time you go to New York, I've got people for you to see. I got people in LA, I got people in Vancouver. And the network that I've built is very simple. Everybody's coming at this with a gift or a skill. And nobody is trying to rip anybody off, and everybody's in it because they know, ultimately, that if you spread this message of just raising your frequency, raising your consciousness just a little bit, not too scary, just dip your toe into it, all of a sudden, a lot of really cool things can happen. And it's just, for a lot of people, it's just woo-woo. And I say, I want to go from woo-woo to wow. Just cool little magic things. I mean, you're on a skateboard. You tried this one and you couldn't believe it. Wait till we take it outside. You'll be like, I want this. And I'll say, oh, there's an ability to get that. It's just small stuff. It's not big stuff. It's small things having huge impact. And Lee's he's a walking example. I would not be sitting here had he not had this little sign on his door. Funny. How much did that sign cost you? $100?
Yeah, maybe.
Well, but then that was it. And that was enough to start a whole ball rolling of a whole other campaign. We're going to be taking some of Lee's ideas into schools in British Columbia. We're taking them to Busker Fest. Your situation, Game Without Pain, how many people come to Busker Fest? We get them out of the, video games, and we get them actually physically doing stuff.
There's
the whole idea, right?
so many opportunities, I think, to bring just different experiences to people. Yeah. And that's what you said earlier in there, and I think when I think of all of the 4 pillars and what they mean to me, it's being open to trying different things and exploring and experiencing things. And again, my comfort is that the physical pillar, so exploring things physically on a board like that, I'm trusting and confident enough in my body to step into that and try that. Right. And some people aren't, and it's hard for them. So what's interesting to me about the gamers, like the athlete, being competitive in that space, and they're really comfortable there in that space, in that environment, and there's a ton of value for their growth and their development and just their capabilities in game or otherwise by taking steps into other things and testing out some experiences elsewhere and being comfortable exploring. It's that exploring mindset, to bring it back around to education, that those 20% of teachers can bring, is they bring this openness and the ability to explore no matter the environment. Like, still in this school system that might be pyramid shaped, there's still enough influence and enough positive energy around to steer people into that mindset of exploring and being interested in the journey, not the destination necessarily, but that the ride is the experience, and that's what the learning is. And I think no matter the system, whether it's kind of the right system or the wrong system, there's always going to be those opportunities to get people into this explorer mindset. I think that's what I'm coming around as I'm listening to you guys, and it's our 3rd time sitting. It's what I'm getting the most out of it for me, and I hope people watching and listening start to get that interested in exploring. Because there's no right, there's no wrong. It's just, can we check some stuff out? Are we open to hearing and seeing it? Ooh or wow, that's not the final response. Is, hey, can we step in a little bit? Can you put a toe in?
It's so funny you mentioned this idea of exploration. The concept of Longboarding for Peace, which was the first initiative that I did, it was not a charity. It was a way to get skateboards and helmets over to the Middle East. I wanted Arabs and Israelis to skateboard with each other. And I worked with the Perez Center for Peace, which is run by a team, and Shimon Peres is the guy that sort of put his name on this building. The building is located right in Jaffa, and Jaffa is just south of Tel Aviv. So this is a place where there's still a lot of tension, but 4 years ago we had these kids rolling around on what is essentially a cement, like, you can't ask for anything better, it's just a cement piece outside this building of peace. And then you have waves, so it's concrete, wave, and peace, right? And that's, the concept was, let's do something small. I don't want money, I just want people to donate the various products. And they did. And from there, things kind of spiraled. We started working with First Nations people. What's extraordinary, though, are the connections that are being made. For example, I don't know if you remember, there's a place out in BC called Awasat, and there was a very it was a catastrophe. There was basically a whole boat capsized, and the First Nations people who live out there came rushing to help with the boat. It was one of those things where people died. It happened last year. Anyway, the reason why I tell you this is that you have a land yachts board, right? So land yachts was the first person to step up with Longboarding for Peace. There's a few other people like Carver and Never Summer, but land yachts donated a whole bunch of boards, and they really got behind the project. And what happened is that one of the people that was involved with this project, called Surfing for Peace, came to Toronto, and I met with him. And so land yachts said, hey, this guy's going out to Awasat, he's doing something with Longboarding for Peace, we want to help out. So we had a Longboarding for Peace initiative with First Nations people in Awasat. 3.5 years later or so, they're on the news with this crazy situation where they rescued all these people. One of the people that they rescued happens to build skate parks for a living. He's donating his time and energy, and they're building an Awasat skate park as a result of this Longboarding for Peace initiative that they did 4 years ago.
Cool.
So this is how it works. Small little thing is now going to have enormous consequences. And the fact is that when you look at things like the magic of Balance Day, it's just a day. It's just July 25th. For some people who understand what July 25th is, great. It's just a wonderful way to balance the year. For others, it's a sunny summer day and you're learning something or you're collaborating. because you don't ask for money, because you're only there to spread what I say is good vibes and high fives and just positive energy, no one can really fault you, you know. Where you get into trouble is when you have people say, you know, oh, that color is really freaking me out, or that number freaks me out, or people are quick to just dismiss, and it's really hard to bring them back. But if you just say, look, this is just about balance and magic, that's fun. And that's where it gets really interesting, because it took 4 years to figure out that the left side of the brain needed to be brought into where the right side was. The skateboarding is really right side driven. Right. The magic and the scientific side of it is left side driven. You put them together and poof, you get sparks.
So you said you're a big right side brain. Where do you get the left side influences? Do you have someone around you that helps you kind of steer that piece?
I'm sure it's my father. It's Lee and my father. No, you know, the truth is the numbers have to add up. The numbers have to add up. In our heart, we know that if the numbers aren't there, it just will not work. Our head is, you know, I have a very interesting exercise I do with the kids, and we've printed out 2 sets of numbers. First set of numbers is 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6 times 7. So 1 through 7 versus 7 times 8 times 9 times 10. So I asked them, which set of numbers do you think gives the bigger number? Of course, they all take out their phones. 1 or 2 kids say, they might be equal. Other kids say, oh, no, there's more numbers in the first set of numbers because it's 1 through 7 numbers, and this is only, you know, 7 times 8 times 9 times 10, so 4 numbers. So it turns out they're both equal. It's 5,040. Why is 5,040 an interesting number? We'll let you Google that.
5 plus 0 plus 4 plus 0 is 9.
Yes.
9 is 1.
Oh, nice. This is good. All right.
So this is something where someone that has a left brain says, yes, that's a very interesting number. In fact, in terms of factoring, which is a math-based thing, 5,040, you can bring a lot of numbers there. Okay, I mean, you see the properties of this number, and it's a magical number. At the same time, it's just something very simple. Our brain's going 1 times 2 times 3 up the way up to 7, and 7 times 8 times 9 times 10. It's just a funny little consequence that there's this 50-40. So I always say, you know, I'm 50-something years old, and I've been skateboarding for 40-something years. And that's it. The seeds are planted in a way that it's just subtle. It's just, you can't go around screaming at the top of the lung, day at a time, because people go, what the hell are you talking about? Mayan Calendar, Dad. People just shut down. But if you say Magic at Balance Day, and July 25th, and just come on out and teach, learn, or collaborate for one day. See something you've never seen before. Taste a fruit you've never tried before. Read a paragraph from a magazine you've never read before. Take the time to open your mind and your eyes and explore for 15 minutes, which is exactly what we're talking about. I'm not asking for a month. It's not day out of balance month. It's day at a time day.
So that as far as bring it back to that kind of left and right stuff, so you have to pick some reasonable, digestible piece for people to get.
Go slowly with this piece. The biggest problem, we're trying to force this down people's throats. They just chakras. What the hell's a chakra? Light? What the hell are you talking? This doesn't make any sense.
It makes it feel scary for me.
Yeah. Even the way our brains look at someone like you, who's wearing purple. Well, that signals certain things to certain people. Adidas, that signals something else. Your hair's a certain way. Every word, if it's not 90% visual, but a good portion of what we see.
Well, we thin slice everything and make it manageable.
Lee's
programmed to see.
Yeah. Lee's got a necklace. Oh, what's going on here? What does this mean? You know, it's like, I like to say, I look like a banker, and I think like, you know, somebody, like I like to think like Leonardo. I mean, the guy had long hair. He looks like a hippie. Leonardo da Vinci looked very weird, you know? But you look at the scientific side of it, it's brilliant. And I think that message is the balance. I look at Tesla. That guy was a genius. If you study the research, he was blowing people's minds. Light years ahead.
Yeah.
And that's a funny pun.
And still.
Yeah.
And yet he died penniless, and he was so left brain thinking that he couldn't get along with people.
Right.
He needed.
Was he so left or was he so right?
Well, you could make the argument he went so left, he actually wound up to the right.
He did.
That's a very good point, Lee. Yeah, I mean, Tesla, but you mentioned Einstein to people. You know, I love Albert Einstein. I still don't really understand what E equals MC squared means, but I do know that intellectuals solve problems and geniuses prevent them. The best way to handle domestic violence is not to have people beat each other up when they're in their home. How do you handle that? Well, probably the best thing is not to have people beat their kids, because people who beat their kids generally wind up beating their spouses. How do you get rid of that problem? And then you start to unpack it, and then you start to realize, education is key.
And that I think the missing piece of education is that building in us this interest in exploring all the time and keeping that alive so that education becomes lifelong. I'm quite interested in physical literacy lately, and that idea and that concept is something that
I like that, physical literacy.
Was really washing over me. It's helping me describe a lot of things that I see in my clients and the people I work with, and some of the gaps that I see in how we don't move as a society, or the ways we do move, and how that's problematic in some ways. But that idea of Jim, and I talked to a gym teacher, a friend of mine, and he said, we're building lifelong learners, and I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's happening.
No.
I think some 20% of teachers are getting 20% of kids to maybe become lifelong learners, but that's not the goal. Is still accomplishing things, not building a sense of literacy so that you can keep exploring and adding to this kind of baseline of knowledge that we have. We need a baseline of knowledge. I think education does that. But this interest to explore needs to be, or I think is only really useful when there's a baseline literacy to really be comfortable exploring. Because there's so much tossed at us all the time, whether we're talking about esoteric principles or really kind of basic principles. We need a baseline literacy to digest. Yeah. Well, and whether it's taught or not,
school teaches us to combine. And there's a great quote by, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's fine.
There's a great quote by Einstein that I'm gonna screw it up. I know I am.
We'll fix it in the mix.
Everyone's. If you teach something about being a fish.
Teach a man to fish?
No.
No, to a fish.
If
a hammer. No. It's in your book.
It is in my
book.
book.
Bicycle or something?
No. Basically, if you want all kids to be a fish, then they're gonna think they're stupid, right? So, and that's what our school system does. Is it? If you don't fit into this box and curriculum, so I agree with you about having a baseline understanding of things and a baseline set of knowledge, but the longer they stay in the current system, then it's gonna they're gonna shut everything down. They're gonna cut out consciousness. They're gonna cut out and shut down. So being a lifelong learner and explorer, except for maybe that 20% where the teachers are passionate and they are teaching things a little bit differently and they are excited about going to work every day. For that other 80%, they're like, I don't want to learn because I had such a crappy experience because I don't fit into this box, right? And I think that's what we're trying to do. And I talk about creating a new system, new schools, new media, getting rid of the government, getting rid of taxes, everything, right? But that goes back to being very, too scary for a lot of people. So then when we come back to here about getting rid of all the esoteric words and just having a day of balance and you talk about building up hives, right? Mm-hmm. So now we start at kind of a grassroots level, and we start supporting each other, and we start leveraging each other's expertise and what we're good at and what we're passionate about, and then these hives start to grow, and then maybe we get to that. And I think that's maybe that's my goal here with all this is to put these tools in people's hands so that this isn't scary and we start to, really live the lives that we're capable of, and if we just dare to live consciously and think differently.
So it's
right?
really,
and so I kind of wanted, that's a long way to ask you to introduce the idea of your hives and how
Sure.
that works and what that looks like.
So the truth is that if you start a concept of people collaborating with each other, you have to use the numbers, and it has to go back to the number that's in our cerebellum, which is 150. As humans, we can only have 150. Right.
Close connections where they're meaningful and you can relate and keep in touch.
Yeah.
So because I believe in balance, I say let's go to 75. Let's just bring this down to half. Right. So the first part of this journey isn't even that. The first part really is, can you find a hive of 6 people? Well, I consider Lee one of my hives, and now you're part of it, so I bring you 2 together. I'm going to see 3 guys in about an hour from now who are part of my Kensington Market hive. However you qualify or quantify these hives, they could be no more than 6 people. For example, if you ever need a photographer, I've got a guy called Paul Perry. I bring him in here, and he will shoot amazing photos for you. He's connected to me through the magician, Baldini, who I met at a birthday party. It's a long story. So Baldini's part of one of my hives. I've got our CMP officer. I've got this guy that distributes skateboard equipment. I've got my printer. I've got a person who can lay things out beautifully. And each of these people Whatever they're doing, I cross-pollinate them. So if you guys need a logo, I got a guy who can build you a logo. And all of a sudden, you wind up with 12 hives. Before you know it, you've got 72 people under your belt, and you're going, what the hell just happened here? And that's when I start to think, okay, so 6 times 12 brings us to this number that's almost half. And then when I realized, well, if you add 3 people to your close side, you wind up with 75. So you have these 12 hives that are buzzing, plus this additional hive, which I call the hive of 3, which are body, mind, and soul. And at any given moment, Lee could be part of body, exercising. You could be soul, talking about, hey, this video game we've created, it makes you feel how somebody in a war zone feels. Or it gives you a really amazing example of what it feels like to feel like a paraplegic. Can you imagine if you made empathy into video games? Boy, people would change, because you have virtual reality giving them something that drives their heart. So all of a sudden we're communicating, and it's no longer a body thing, it's a soul thing. And then the mind, I'm learning stuff about video game players that I never even knew about. And all of a sudden it's like, well, that can fit in my magazine. So you, at any given point, have these 12 and a half hives. And then eventually, once you feel comfortable, you then bring in an additional 12. And then you have a solid 24 hives, plus the people who are going to be there for you as additional support. So I say no more than 150 people, of which 144 are running all these hives around the world for you, and 6 at any given moment, and you're the 7th, at 6 are there for support in body, mind, and soul. And you could even go further and say the people who are supporting you, body, mind, and soul, divided into 2 areas. One is chakras red through orange or yellow, and one's are chakras blue through violet. So one are on one level, one on another level, but they're all through the heart. The only people in your network are people who you know have the following characteristic. They are trustworthy, they are passionate, and they will be committed till the cows come home. If you have people like that, 150 people times 12 hives, 12 different people who have 150 people, oh my goodness. I mean, look at Lee.
Then we start to do, then we get to a system.
Yeah. And if 150 people, we know that 20% of them are going to wind up giving you 80% of the income. Just work it back. What do you want to make? Are you comfortable making $10,000 a month? Okay, well, that's going to cost you this much in sales of postcards or pins or people going out and giving information. One of the sessions we're talking about pays $25 an hour. What is the session? It's just a Magic of Balance booth with some balance boards and people in a park teaching. How long do they teach for? 30 seconds if you want. It's a workshop. It can be there for 3 minutes. But every encounter, there's a seed that's planted. I had one guy, he's so on fire with this, he calls me at 6 o'clock in the morning. And it's not motivated by money. He's motivated by the stoke that he had for skateboarding. And that energy is now being transferred somewhere. Wait till they meet Lee. Because Lee will look at these guys and say, what are you guys eating? How are you guys living your life? Like, have you thought about this? And all of a sudden, he has 3 new clients. Because Lee's vision of these 4 pillars and your vision of where you want to take people who are literally harming themselves playing these video games, it's all sent through this idea of, hey, we're just here talking about balance. If you're playing video games for 18 hours a day, you will hijack your body. Your body will,
start to shut down.
Exactly.
In essence,
yeah.
anyways.
And how did you learn that lesson? Well, this guy handed out a card. He let me go on a skateboard, and I told him how much games I played, and all of a sudden, a dialogue started. Social media is great once you know what you're looking for, but it really sucks if you're stuck in that treadmill of why is my life the same way? It's because we're humans, and as a hive, we trust people who are in the same hive. I trust that you'll spread this message of balance in a way that's professional and cool, and everybody I link you to will also feel the same way. It's hard to do that with a pyramid, because the guy at the top's making all the money, and all the energy is going toward the top, and it's not fair. We know it's not fair. What this does, it says everybody has an opportunity to be part of this hive. And eventually, yeah, my goal is to have a hive in 20% of the countries in the world, and that's enough. And how many countries are there? Let's say there's 200 countries. If I'm in 40 countries, I'll be very happy. I don't need any more money than that. 40 countries? How many thousands of people is that going to be?
And that's the reach thing is interesting. If you're going to change the way we look at things and digest information and then act on it. We need constant reminders and stimulation for those same thoughts and those same patterns, and we need to be around people so that the hive thing makes sense for that.
But here's the biggest thing I want to add. When Lee teaches the magic of balance, or when I teach it, or when you teach it, or any of these folks gets involved with it, it's really something extraordinary because it's no more than 6 people. There is a reason why all these lecturers do so great on TED. People love to hear the message, they just don't want to implement it. Mm-hmm. And the only way you can implement it...
work, right?
Well, exactly. So how do you convince? So my attitude is if I got 6 people, one-on-one, I know most of them are going to retain it because they're on these boards, they're on these stilts, their brains are firing. If I get 20% out of 6, it's still 1 or 2 people every time I do it. And I'm going to be up in Bancroft, Ontario.
Nice.
And
it's beautiful up there.
20,000 people show up for this festival. I can only do 6 people at a time. But man, those 6 people are going to have the time of their lives. It's an interactive demo. They don't really get that. Most people perform on stage, or the jugglers at Busker Fest. You're enjoying the moment.
Right, you're watching with them, but you're not really exploring that sensation.
And this is the catalyst. They will get to Lee, they will get to you, they will get to a variety of different people through this, and that's the bridge strategy of the magic of balance. Mm-hmm. I'm not Houdini, and I'm not Tony Hawk. But what Tony Hawk and Houdini had, Tony Hawk still has it, is the stoke, has this fire, and it inspires people. And that's what we want to take. That's why there are gurus and people who want that light, but they're really hard pressed to know how to figure out how to get there, right? They're challenged by this.
And it works that way in each of the other hives as well, right? Yeah. People that wouldn't have seen you or known what magic balance is are gonna come through me, through Scott now, and through the other people in our network. So
it's a reverse pyramid.
It to be, yeah.
You can only have 150 people, and it's really up to you how far you want to take it. But for a lot of us, we think we've gone to school, we get the diploma, we get the degree, we go out, we get married, we have the kids, we get all the stuff we're told we have to get.
Don't get me started.
and then at 50 or 60, people have like an awakening and say, wait a second here, or don't, because a lot of times people will be given insights, and then all of a sudden it's like 10 years later, oh, you didn't act on it. I volunteered in an old age home, so I deal with people in their 90s. It's really hard to say this, but I'm going to say it. If you wake up and realize what exactly is happening out there, and you understand humanity operates on many different levels, and not everything that we see or perceive is, there's a lot more going on, I would just say that, from a scientific standpoint and from a spiritual standpoint. And the intersection of those...
Saying the same thing, just differently.
Exactly. And the intersection of that, at age 90, it's really tough. It's really hard. Your back hurts, your bones hurt. Physically, a lot of 80 and 90-year-olds, they're wise and they love life, some of them, and they have that spark, but a lot of them just like, get me out of here. People have turned to me and said, I don't want any more life. I'm done what I'm supposed to do. And I respect that. Quality of life now has become a huge issue. So quality of life issues don't begin when you're 60 plus. They begin when you're 6 years, 3 years old.
Yeah.
That's where the roots are.
Yeah, well, if you want to go into it,
it's mindset.
It's in the, like you take epigenetics, like you're affecting what that quality of life is going to be before you're even conceived.
Well, look at the 7 times 7. The seventh week is the 49th day, which is when the pineal gland is formed. When everything kind of gels in terms of, is that baby a male or a female on the 49th day?
Mm-hmm. Love the math.
If the math doesn't work, it doesn't work. The math has to work.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
but am I right about the 49th day in the male and female?
And I mean, if you look at the dimensions of a circle, right? People don't look at everything in our universe is mathematically correct. Like, so when you talk about if the math doesn't work, well, it does work because it's formed from an infinite source, right? And so nothing would exist if those numbers didn't work out precisely the way they do.
And that's
so nothing is accidental.
Yeah.
Nothing is
accidental. That's the magic of this. That's why if I was sitting down with you, we may not agree politically, we may not be able to do video games, but the one thing we can both look at, if you are strictly left brain and I'm strictly right brain, is we look at Leonardo, or we look at someone like Harry Houdini, and we would both be mystified, and Albert Einstein, because we can appreciate the magic. Mm-hmm. And that is the bridge strategy. Even a Tesla, who's now becoming obviously a lot more prominent, but there's a guy called Charles Steinmetz, who's like a pre-Tesla. This guy has a whole crazy story. There are musicians that can do brain surgery, and there are brain surgeons that can play football. And there's this beautiful idea I have that on the magic of Balance Day, people will just use it as an excuse to say, let me teach you the word in this language, for balance. Or let me show you what this tastes like. 15 minutes, just try this new, experience in your mouth. Listen to this song. We just need something to be that catalyst. And because it doesn't, that spark, and because it doesn't cost anything, the people who are teaching it are just as overjoyed to teach it as the people are to receive it. I'm not telling people donate to charity. I'm not saying do a challenge. What I'm saying is teach, learn, collaborate for 15 minutes. And all of a sudden it's like, well, why haven't we thought about this? Well, what does the day out of time do? It actually calibrates the entire year. So the concept of collaboration is very right side thinking, because it's fun, free, collab, let's do it. But the idea of calibration is very left side thinking. So we are collaborating while we are calibrating, because that last day of the year, that day at a time, collaborates July 26th to the first day, and the cycle begins again. It's the same thing with pollinate and pollution. Do you want to pollinate these wonderful ideas externally, or do you want to bring in pollution to yourself that just gets you're polluting your mind with, I'm going down this way, I'm going down that way, and these people, people go crazy. Pollinate good ideas and clean out the pollution that it's just, you realize, a lot of this stuff, as you say, Lee, is we're taught, and as soon as you start to go, it's like
you're a troublemaker. And
it is.
I
got kicked out of summer camp. But it's the way George Bernard Shaw worked, right? George Bernard Shaw said, the reasonable man, sees the world a certain way and just adapts to it. The unreasonable man sees the way a certain way and doesn't want any part of it. So therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. I mean, think of it this way. Think of it this way. The energy has to go somewhere. You have to do something with this. So I look at it and say, I'll be quasi unreasonable.
Just catalyst for it all and direct it somewhere.
And then you know what? I get kicked in the teeth as well. Like we all do. There's not a lot of people that really can connect dots, and when you connect dots, people get upset with you. It's like, you can't. I had a guy a few minutes ago just say, I don't understand this. I said, it's just a workshop. It's just magic of Balance Day. That's all. Don't. It's $50. Don't blow your brains out. Don't overthink it. Because people are used to overthinking. You don't have to.
Or not thinking at all.
There you go.
Unconscious.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you talk just for the viewers a little bit more about that July 25th?
Sure.
From the Mayan side of things, like what that actually means.
Okay. So
you know me.
I gotta do the Mayan.
Down the rabbit hole, buddy. Come on.
All right. So the Mayan calendar is really interesting in that everybody knows December 2012, the world did not end. I think there was a different message though. I think the Mayans really had a beautiful calendar, because if you study it, and someone like George Eastman, you remember the Kodak facility in Rochester?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, George Eastman studied the Mayans, and this guy made a lot of money selling film, if you remember. Interesting. So his concept was he ran his business on a 13-month calendar. He encouraged his employees to think about this. Yeah. So the idea is very simple. There are 13 moons in a year. Each moon, from the beginning to end, is 28 days. 13 times 28 is 364 days. It fits beautifully. And the calibration, of course, is this one day, July the 25th. And on that day, the Mayans celebrated what's called Green Day. Not the band, but this day at a time.
It's still a good celebration technique.
I think they call it Green Day. I think they call it Green Day because I think it speaks to the heart. The idea that the chakras, the top three and the bottom three, are balanced through the heart. It all calibrates back to the heart. I don't care how left-wing or how right-wing you are. I don't care if you believe in the Mayan calendar or not. All I care about is what is your heart saying as it relates to this idea. And for a lot of people, the math has to add up. Well, women understand math real good. Why? Because women have 13 cycles, right? What the Gregorians did is they brought in a whole different system. They brought in, well, we'll have some months will have 29 days, but only every 4 years. Some months will be 30 days, some months will be, and all of a sudden, it kind of got everything off balance. Men and women, I think, a long time ago, and again, I'm not a professional archaeologist, nor am I a historian. I play one on TV. But my sense is that perhaps a society that the men understand the women's cycles as it relates to the moon, as it relates to what is essentially conception. If men were in tune with that, then there probably would be less grief. I mean, I'm sure there were still issues back there. You know, he stole my dog. But at one level, I'm sure that the Mayans, the women who were the goddesses, who literally were equal to their counterparts, and the men that respected these 13 moons, I'm sure for them, this day out of time event, which has been celebrated for thousands of years, I'm sure that vibe can be translated in today's society. Who wouldn't want to learn something? Who wouldn't want to teach? Who wouldn't want to collaborate? And so the math adds up. Now here's the strangest thing about the Mayans. It's a beautiful name, Maya. I'd named my daughter Maya. And she happened to be born 22 years ago on July the 25th. And the other thing I'll leave you with is that there are 3 numbers that keep repeating in my life. And of course, everyone knows 7. We all have that as a lucky number. But that's where numerology is funny, right? So the 3 numbers are very simple: 3, 11, and 22. And for me, the idea that the numbers have to add up, there's no other way of saying it. My entire life has been about balance. My entire world is focused on how do I bring people together? How can I be that bridge? Well, what better way than a day in July that the sun's probably going to be out, and that for thousands of years no one people really even thought about. The International Day Out of Time has only been celebrated since 1992. We've not even had it for 40 years. It's only been around for 34 years. That's it. And even then, there's only a handful of places around the world that have actual celebrations. So now what's going to happen is there'll still be those celebrations, and those people are going to go, wait a second, that's the same day. And then the penny will drop. You bring the left side people and the right side people. Can't argue with the numbers. July 25th, yeah, it's a great calendar day. It just so happens to be that's the day that everything calibrates to the Mayan calendar.
That's interesting.
Pretty cool, eh?
I want to understand why the Gregorians did that with the calendar. Why must
You know, because if you Google it,
12 apostles,
it's fascinating.
Yeah.
The Gregorians did a lot of things. The Romans really is what you're talking about. They introduced things like salary. So people got paid
That's
on
why.
certain people days.
That's why.
It was a control thing, I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you've done the research, right? Again,
That's exactly why.
when you tap into this, you can really connect things like crazy. Ultimately, though, it boils down to one thing, and that is, why do you believe what you do? What have you seen, and what do you internalize, and what do you take and do with it? And I don't know how to say this, but you can't argue with the math. There are people who go around and say, "Woo, the world's ending," and they wind up, just being marginalized, and nothing happens. And there are people who say, "I understand this information, but I'm going to keep it internally." I totally respect that too. That's a path. And there are people like you, I, and Lee who say, "No, this information is cool. We can help. We can heal people. We can progress things. And it's going to take a long time. We're not a charity, but the truth is that we've got some information that's worthwhile, and you share it, and then it trickles away through this hive."
And the truth ultimately comes out, right? Like you're not going to hide, and if you look at kind of in revolutionary terms, every 150 to 250 years there's a revolution. Well, we're approaching that time, right? And all the deceit that's built our society to date, that's going to end. And that's what, when we talk about awakening or remembering or, heightening of consciousness, that's what's happening. People are becoming aware, and we're awakening to this fact that, hey, like the current foundation that society is built on, it's no longer working for the masses, and we need to change. And so stuff like this is starting to happen, and I think it's happening more and more frequently, and with more and more groups of people. So I'm excited about it.
I think you just need to have a catalyst. You just need to have a dialogue. I live uptown. I'm in Thornhill. I'm never downtown. Cool things happen downtown. Catalysts begin here. I've been doing this for 41 years. I've been doing skateboard magazines on the web for 20 years. But ultimately, what it boils down to is that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. It's actually when the teacher is ready, the student will appear. When you yourself become enlightened, that's 49% of it. The 51%, to bring it to what I consider a level where you get the balance right, is the 51% is that extra 2% that you give back. And you basically raise the spark or the light in others. but you don't do it in such a way that you hijack your own experience. I mean, a lot of artists raise a lot of vibration and sparks and just are starving artists. Like, they're just not making any money. They've thrown away the entire experience of what their talents are incredible, but they're just not able to make it work financially. So the left side of the brain has to kick in. You have to make money. We live in a society which, how did the studio come about?
Yeah.
Lee drives a nice car. So the reality is that you find that balance with 150 people. The Hive works because if you live in a society where $150 a day is reasonable, guess what? 150 people can give you $1 a day. What happens if you live in a society where $1,500 a day is what you need? Well, those 150 people need to give you $10 a day. You see, where this is all going is eventually on July the 25th, I want to make as much money in one day with this that I don't have to worry about the entire year. And I want my Hive to experience the same thing. I don't need billions of dollars. I'm just saying, it wouldn't be great if you knew that that day, July the 25th, set you up to do art, to do science, to explore, and all you need to do for the next 364 days after that day was just live your life. Everything was taken care of. It's not socialism. It's the idea that you've used the social hive to create your world that is literally paid for in one day. You know, when the Koreans come to Canada, they each drop $15,000. It's 10. They all drop $15,000 and they buy a convenience store for the person that's coming. That's why all the Koreans have convenience stores. It's a hive. 15 grand. It's a reverse pyramid scheme because they know that the people who come into this are going to be trustworthy and they're going to be definitely building these stores. Meanwhile, when a new person comes, they put in the $15,000, $10,000. I'm not even asking people to do that. I'm just saying that the premise of us collaborating, a huge amount can be done. And realistically, when you don't have to ask for money, but you give money, because there's a whole network of people that want to pay. I'm paying these guys today $25 an hour. They're freaking out. What? 20? Yeah, it's something very small, but it works. So that's where I'm going with this. People have to realize it starts with them. They have to be open. They want to explore. This is a method. This is a path. And then it just goes.
I'm just thinking about the other pillars, when I think about, because the stress that people are under financially in particular, that the getting everything together to launch something like this takes a lot. It takes a lot of energy to build something like this. It takes 40 years of accumulated stuff.
But you chip away at it.
You got to chip away at it, for sure. But I know I've spoken at universities and I speak every year at a couple of them, and just speaking to the kids, and everyone's nervous and stressed about trying to make enough money and get into a job pretty quickly and get into their career path pretty quickly. And I think I'm interested to see how this evolves and grows, and if there's ways to get students involved earlier, to start seeing this kind of stuff earlier, and who you're reaching out to for help to help start growing the message. And there's a lot of people who can teach really early, know how to be in their professional careers to teach and get this into people's kind of mindsets earlier rather than later to get involved in something like this. So
well, imagine this program in a elementary school where you have bullying. Okay, so you have the kids, don't do social media bullying, don't do physical bullying, don't do mental bullying. And kids say, we won't, we promise, and they sing a song, we won't bully, they watch a video, we won't bully. Let's assume though you take a kid who is bullying, okay, and you put him on stilts, and you say, look, this is the feeling. We know you're a great skateboarder, because sometimes these kids go, oh, I can do stilts. And they get on the stilts and they start to freak out because it's very unnerving. The right side of the brain's going, oh my God, the left side of the brain's going, oh my God, it's like, this is very much out of my comfort zone. I'm not saying that stilts are the answer. What I'm saying is that when you tell somebody who's really feeling very uncomfortable in an environment where people are looking at this, 5 other people watching him, and you say, look, your words mean something. And your words are like these stilts. And I said, you can be supportive, and the words can build people up, or the words can be very rocky, and they can shake people off. The metaphor of balance is so perfect because bullies are not balanced. Their aggression against somebody is grounded in all kinds of horrific things going on in the home or with other people. The reality is, though, if you want bullying to end, you have to start at age 3, at age 2. And so how do you do that? Well, you get kids active. The energy starts to go. And you have a support system. So the older kids are teaching the younger kids anti-bullying. My vision is to have 6-7-year-olds teach 3-year-olds, but with 14-year-olds being in the middle.
So So getting youth involved is early. It's not even like wait till university.
You're screwed by the time you know the expression, right? Show me the person at 7, I'll show you the man.
Right.
Show me the boy at 7, I'll show you the man. We got 7 years. And that's why eventually I will get down to the grassroots, to the roots of this problem, which is kids need an outlet. I'm not suggesting it's skateboarding. I'm not suggesting it's chess. I'm suggesting it's chess and skateboarding. My brother grew up very differently than I did. He was computer driven in the home for years, making films, making computer stuff. And he was never out. I was always outside. And the reality is that both of us grew into very different individuals. He's very left side, I'm very right side. But now what's happening is slowly but surely he's coming into my world and I'm coming into his world. And it stabilizes. But would you not agree that if you can think out of both sides of your brain, you've stabilized yourself emotionally?
Absolutely.
The science proves it, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm basically saying. We've gone on for so many times of lecturing, kids don't absorb. Kids can only learn if they do. So the idea is to have not just experiential, but teaching. I can have 14-year-olds teach 12-year-olds.
Yeah, teaching is the best way to learn.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Is that good enough for you? Because my voice is going.
Yeah, no, that was awesome.
Good. All right. I'm gonna head out.
Yeah, bang. What time is here? Let's see.
Do you want to?
3:49.
Oh, look at that.
Do you want to show that? Do you want to explain
Yeah,
that?
I'd like to explain this real quick.
Yeah.
So what word do you see here? We'll show it to the calendar. What word do you see?
Balance.
That's right. And you see the same word, right? So the idea is very much like this. We'll show it to the calendar. That says balance, right? But look, we're balanced because we're on a skateboard, right? And the idea we're on concrete waves. You see how it says balance? But I want people to think counterintuitively. So counterintuitiveness is quirkiness, it's cleverness, but the brain has to understand that it's absolutely valid, right? So here's some magic pixie dust, I throw it, and now what do you see? H-A-R-M-O.
Harmony.
Thank you. Yeah. So it's an ambiogram. Why do ambiograms work? Because our brain loves puzzles. So the entire curriculum is on a card. And when I show this to kids and they see balance, and they're like, yeah, this is awesome. And then I say, no, it's harmony. They're like, wait a second, I guess it is. And one of the things we've done with kids is we've shown them the color green, but it says purple underneath it. This idea of our brain firing on different cylinders. So our left side of the brain sees the color green, but the word is purple. And so we ask them, what word is this? But the word purple is in green, this kind of stuff. And they're like, no, it's purple, no, it's green. And it's very funny what you can do with psychology. It's incredible. Our brains have this amazing capacity to try and reach for clues. And that's where the magic comes in. It's a misdirection.
That's it. And then at least you can acknowledge that your brain can fool you and you can talk to your brain differently. I think that's a really important learning is that your brain can trick you. So don't just rely on that. You got to dig a little deeper and explore and
ultimately reprogram it.
Yeah, that's it. The neuroplasticity. As a scientist, or the son of a scientist, my father was deeply into things like biofeedback before anybody else was. He felt that you could manage pain in a certain way with biofeedback, and this was counterculture stuff. But he used acupuncture before anybody in dentistry. He did all kinds of research, and I laugh about it now because I couldn't understand this. But from a heart level, I know that what he was trying to do is he was trying to further people's minds. And that's really all there is. Good. All right, I'll send you some. Thank you. I'll send you some logos and stuff.
Yeah, please do.
And I gotta get to these buttons. Can't stop the buttons, man.
Do a little debrief.
Yeah, we'll do a little wrap. We'll wait till he rolls out.
Yeah,
We'll film a second.
Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you, Lee.
Hey, thanks so much for coming down. Man. It was really.
I think that was awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys.
Pleasure to chat.
All I ask is just help spread the message. Really, I really feel you must know people who know people, and
Likewise. Likewise.
I love this gaming thing. I will try and incorporate it into the next issue if I can. But either way, we'll talk. If there's any companies that you think might be interested in getting involved with this, we sell postcards. We just put stuff in the back of postcards.